You've just landed inside LaunchStreet, the innovation podcast, where we interview top innovators out there shaking things up so you can innovate and differentiate and get further, faster in this crazy, cluttered world. And now, innovation thought leader and your Superfly host, Tamara Kleinberg.
What's up, LaunchStreeters? Tamara here, your innovation guide and lover of butter coffee. Seriously, if you haven't yet, put some really good organic butter in your coffee. It is so smooth and filling. Oh, drinking some right now. All right, as you can tell, I am super excited about today's Q&A. One of my favorite of all favorite people, Maureen Berkner Boyt of Moxie Exchange, asked a question that I think we need to be talking more about. She asked, what are the biggest myths in innovation that we are all buying into? So good. Okay, here's why I think this question matters. In my experience, a lot of us are not just buying into these myths. We are actually actively engaging in these myths, and they are sabotaging our innovation efforts. It's like running in place. Yeah, you're running and sweating, but you'll never reach your destination. Do you know what I mean? We cover 4 huge ones, and I bet you'll find you are engaging in one, if not all of them. Okay, here we go. Well, I am back with Connie Warden, the well-being warrior. I felt the need to say it that way. I'm not sure why. It just came out like warrior. So good. Doing another Q&A session from one of our awesome LaunchStreeters. This question is from Maureen Boyt from Moxie Exchange, which is an incredible company, by the way. For those of you looking for diversity and inclusion work, this company is amazing. Her question to us is, what are the biggest innovation myths that we are all buying into that are sabotaging our work? I love these questions, Connie, because I feel like sometimes in work and life, there's this like river current that we all buy into, and it's just taking us downstream, but it's not actually serving us. And if we took a step back and really thought about it, we'd see that it's like become this prevailing narrative, yet it's not actually working for anybody. I find it so interesting. So let me share what the 4, I think, big myths are that we're buying into that are sabotaging our work, and then we'll kind of dig into each of them. The first one is that you have to think outside the box to be innovative. That phrase drives me crazy. We'll talk about that. So you don't need to be outside the box. It's ridiculous. The second one is that innovation is for the select few. The person with a purple streak in their hair. Exactly. Doesn't it just make you want to throw up? It's ridiculous. The person with the job title, the person with the quirky glasses. We all have that person, but it's not true. The third one is innovation is for a certain time. I often find that comes with a crisis, like, oh my God, now we have to innovate. Before everything was comfortable, now we have to innovate. That's why, by the way, you get to those moments where innovation becomes point in time, because you waited. So we're going to dig into that. And the last one is, and this is the one that I think probably surprises people the most, it's when you're successful, you should keep doing what's working and not innovate as much. That's actually a huge myth. And we'll talk a little bit about companies who I think rested on their success, because what you find is the marketplace leaves you behind eventually when you do that. So, Connie, welcome. What do you say we unpack some myths?
All right. I love this.
So let's start on the first myth I talked about, that you have to think, and I have to put this in air quotes, although you can't see me, outside the box to be innovative. That, to me, is ridonculous.
Ridonculous.
Ridonculous. It's my new word. Here's why. We all have boxes that we have to deal with, right? We have constraints. We have resources. We have people. We have opportunities, competition, time, challenges. And here's what I find happens. When we go, scrap all that, we're thinking outside the box. We try to go for these big blue sky ideas, and they all sound great, but then we bring it back to the boxes, our realities, and we don't implement, and the innovation goes nowhere.
You know, that reminds me of the story.
Oh.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yes! Oh my God, go on.
What did they do? They gave him a box and said, this is what is up in space. Figure out a way to fix this.
I can't believe I hadn't connected the dots between that before, Connie, what you're saying. So if you haven't seen, it's Apollo 13, right? Is that the movie with Tom Hanks, where they do that? And you're so right. They can't get back to Earth. They're losing oxygen by the second, and they've got what they've got. So the brilliance in the story, what you just shared is that's a great example of thinking inside the box and being just as innovative, if not more so, because you can actually do something with it.
Yes. And the first
love
time,
that.
Yeah, the first time they said, we can't come up with something. They said, that's not an answer.
Yeah.
Go back in and you're going to find an answer. And they did.
I think that's one of my favorite my favorite movie scenes of all time is a moment where they throw the stuff on the table with all the engineers and the guys like smarty pants in the room and they're like, all right, go. And it's with duct tape and like, it's brilliant. So to me, that's why innovation outside the box doesn't work, because it's the opposite of what you're saying. It's let's pretend like all this crap doesn't exist, but it does. And then we try to fit it back in. I like to think of it a little differently, because what I'm not saying is don't stretch yourself, think differently, go for something bigger and bolder than what you think you can do. I'm all for all of that. But I find that if you rearrange the box you have, you can actually get there in a better, smarter, and sometimes even more innovative way, because you're forced to do what those guys did and say, all right, here's the 7 things we have. How do we use them differently?
Yes.
And I think if you do things like, if you shift perspective on what you have in front of you, you can do it. I'll give you a great example. Actually, something in our backyard. There's 2 examples, actually. One in our backyard and one that's kind of bigger, that I love, that I think are perfect examples of shifting and rearranging the box that you have. So there's this library here in Colorado, which I love to brag about. They're my favorite people, called Anythink Library. Have you heard of it? Have you been there?
No.
Oh my gosh.
No.
If you want to be inspired, just go and hang out there. It's so cool. But here's
libraries. Okay, libraries are my biggest thing. I mean, that's what heaven looks like, by the way. Rows and rows of books.
Just rows and rows and rows. Yep. Well, here's the interesting thing. So the library as an industry is dealing with massively changing times. So you've got this new set of customers, right? They're communities who have totally changing needs. They've got iPhones at their fingertips, which means they have Google to look up anything that they want. They can download any book that they want, if not get it for free, right? They pay for it on iBook or iTunes or Kindle, whatever. And their attention span is less. And this kind of the concept of a warehouse of books has become really outdated, because now we've got we've got Google, right? We've got all the other ways. So what a lot of people in the library world were doing was actually fighting that and saying, let's get outside the box and think differently. The people at Anythink rearranged the box that they have. And they said, okay, we're the lowest funded library region in Colorado. They're up in the Thornton area, whatever that area is called. We've got this community that's, there are these type of kids now. This is what we're dealing with. What do we do? And instead of fighting it, they rearranged the box in most brilliant ways. They became, instead of a place with books, they became a center of discovery. So when you go in there, there's books, but there's all these different stations and areas. They've got these great t-shirts called "Shh" is a 4-letter word. I love it. Like, you can be as loud as you want. They're not librarians. They're wranglers. They got rid of the Dewey Decimal System, and they actually categorize books the way you actually look for books. And by the way, for those of you not old enough to know what the Dewey Decimal System is, it is this painful numerical way of categorizing books. So you'd have to look it up on the card. Then you go to the librarian and you say, I'd like book number 442118.25567, please. Like, that's how you looked for books. It made no sense. But they said, well, how are people engaging now, and how can we bring that to the library and bring this back now? Because of their work, they actually have elevated the entire library world with them. They've really led the way of what's possible for libraries, and it's super cool. But to me, they're a great example of rearranging the box you have. Lowest funded, changing consumer, archaic model. They took all of that, they flipped it on its head.
I can't wait to go and visit that place.
Oh my God, you're going to love it.
I call myself a discoverer because we went to the library so much growing up.
Now, did you go to I was about to say rent books. It's supposed to be check out books, right? That's the right language to use. Did you go to check out books? Did you go because that's where you hung out? How was the library in your world?
Well, okay, first of all, I have 7 brothers and sisters.
Oh my gosh.
And so
where do you fit where do you fit in that? What's your number?
I'm number 3. So it goes Roy, Don, Connie, Judy, Sharon, Brenda, Stephen, Pam.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And sometimes my dad would say, hey, Roy, Don, Connie, Judy, Sharon, come here.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's great storytelling. Anyway,
I
so
love
going
that.
to the library was free, and we just could take anything. I would just go through the catalog and go, what do I want to learn today? Oh, okay, I'll get this book. Yeah, I really credit my parents for making me a discoverer. So I got to go to this library, and maybe we really got off topic, but anyway.
No, I think, but first of all, your love of libraries is awesome. And I think this new generation, like if you look at my kids down, it's not the same for them, right? They have access to everything at their fingertips. So like I swear to you, my son, Liam, my 13-year-old, he asks Siri everything. And if Siri doesn't respond or is having problems, he doesn't even bother typing it in, right? It's all voice command for him. So I make my kids read all the time because I think it's I think it's an incredible skill and you have to have it. And I have dyslexia, so it was always hard for me. And I always wished that I had more of it. Like someone actually made me do more of it. Thanks, parents, not throwing you under the bus or anything. But the reality was, like for libraries, is they were struggling really bad. But because they took their struggles and turned those into, hey, we can take these challenges and turn them into opportunities, I think that's why they were able to change it. I'll share one other example with you that just came to mind. There's this great book called Why the Cadillac Has Fins. And it's all these kind of weird stories, why Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors, like all these fascinating stories. It's a great book. And one of the ones it talks about is Greyhound Bus, which may not be doing as well now, but the backstory is super fascinating. So the short of it is there's two guys. They own a auto store, a dealership, where they're selling these things called hub mobiles. They are like 7-passenger cars. Like think of them as like early minivans, basically. And they're in this town where all these people work in the mines that are about 4 miles away. This is up in, I think it's either South or North Dakota. And every day, all these miners are passing their auto dealership to walk to the mines and back. And these guys, in the meantime, who have these cars, nobody's buying it. They're going bankrupt because nobody wants these cars. Yet the customer's there, right? They're going back and forth to the mines every day and they can't figure it out. So here they are. They've got all these cars on their lot that they've purchased. Nobody's buying it. They're going bankrupt. And finally, one of the brothers says to the other brother, hey, instead of trying to sell the cars, what if we rented seats on them to take people to and from work? And that's what created Greyhound Bus. But that to me is thinking differently and rearranging what's right in front of you.
That is an awesome story. And by the way, I think Greyhound may come back. I'll tell you what, my nephew, I think he's like 28. Him and his wife haven't owned a car in 8 years. They either, he goes to visit my brother, his dad, with the Greyhound. He goes from Chicago to Madison on the Greyhound. And of course they do Uber, and they also put themselves in a place where they don't have to drive. But I don't know. I mean, the millennials are going that direction. So maybe Greyhound,
I'll tell you what, this is a random side note, but I would love to see public transportation make a real comeback and accelerate in this country. I think it's one of the things that we are missing compared to Europe and other places is really solid transportation that gets us anywhere we want to go. I mean, you can go anywhere in Europe on the train, the buses. It's so easy. Here in the US, I know we're spread out, but come on, people, like let's have Amtrak, Greyhound, Uber, let's like have them all work together to create the most brilliant network of public transportation. I think it would be game changing for us.
And we have to change our perspective. I heard somebody go, oh, she has to take the bus. Poor her. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So there was a whole image that this person apparently had about someone taking the bus, being a lowlife or something.
So that to me, I'm so glad you said that. That to me is a great example of an opportunity to rearrange the box. So if I'm Greyhound, and that's my challenge is we look at it as the people who take Greyhound are people who can't afford a car or like are, socioeconomically lower or whatever. What a great opportunity for them to flip it and to show us or to own it and be like, hey, you don't want to spend money on the right, like frivolous money, have more money when you get there. Like there's so many, I think Greyhound, call me. Like I think Connie and I just solved your marketing problems. Yeah. But you know who did that really well, by the way, is Domino's. Do you remember their ads a couple years ago who were like, hey, we suck. Our pizza sucked. So we're going to do something about it. Do you remember that? Like that was, oh my God, they videotaped all these focus groups where people were like, it's the worst pizza in the world. I would never eat it. It's disgusting. And instead of being like, hey, we're going to transform everything and come out with this new campaign about how amazing we are, which to me is like outside the box and has nothing to do with reality. They said, okay, we're going to own it, and then we're going to innovate from there. And now actually they have this whole app delivery, and they're really ahead of the game of everybody else, but it's because they rearranged the box that they had. They owned it and said, all right, our pizza isn't good, so we're going to start by just frankly owning it. And it totally put them back on the trajectory.
That's an amazing story. Yeah, because Domino's is back.
I know. Go look at the ads. They're from a couple years ago, and you're just like, I can't believe they're airing their dirty laundry like this. Yeah. But to kind of bring it back, that's what happens when you rearrange the box that you have. So that's myth number one. We're not going to do that again. Myth number two is that innovation is for the select few. And I always love it when people tell me, oh, Tamara, I'm not innovative. It's not me. It's, Connie down the hall with her ninja outfits and her, cool being able to do a backspring and it's just so awesome and creative, and she works in funky cafes, but not me. I'm over here in operations. Do you hear that? It drives me nuts.
Yeah. There's, I have a friend. Oh, you may know him, Keith.
Oh, yeah.
Keith is always thinking, and trying to rearrange things. He actually came up with something for his dentist. And I don't, and so who would have thunk that the person in the dental chair came up with this device for the dentist? I mean, anyway, I just think that's a great example.
Because it's not just for the select few, it's for everybody. Right. So hey, Keith, if you're listening. Yeah, and that's a great example, right? Like he's in the chair, he's like, I have it, because it's not for just the select few. It's actually the reason we launched our whole Innovation Quotient Edge, our assessment that tells you your unique innovator archetype, so how you innovate naturally, is because frankly, we were tired of people coming to us and saying, oh, it's not me, it's so-and-so. But I think what we've come to realize in our 20 plus years of work and research is that being innovative is universal. We all do it in some way. However, how we do it is unique to each of us. And we need to own that we do it differently. I think part of the mistake that we make, and part of the reason we think it's only for the select few, is because we all think that, to be innovative, we have to step outside our comfort zone and dare to be fearless. But isn't that really, don't you find that's only a part of the equation?
Oh, very much. And sometimes, my daughter told me that a tweaker, and I love that as an innovation type.
Yeah.
But
isn't there always editing and evolving and adjusting? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is huge. But isn't there also a name for that, a drug or something? Somebody, I don't know. I mean, there is. And she goes, oh my God, Mom, you just really said that? And I'm like, what?
I'm a tweaker in a good way. Well, it's funny because, we're in Colorado out here, and we had labeled them all long before pot became legal out here. And then after it became legal, I was like, hee. But here's the thing about tweakers that are interesting, right? So most of us decide something is a success or a failure pretty quickly, and then we stop and we move on. Tweakers are really good at constantly editing and adjusting and evolving. That's what makes them good at innovation. So while the rest of us give up, they keep making one little change until they get to that really innovative space, because oftentimes great innovation comes from a tiny little shift and a tiny little tweak. And that's how people who have that in their archetype do it. On the flip side, people who are inquisitive, for example, are people who innovate by asking questions. And them, right, in a meeting because we're all done and we've closed our notebooks and they're like, I have one more question. And we're like, no, it's lunchtime. But they recognize that for them, innovation's in the questions, not the answers. And the way they innovate is by pulling away the layers of the onion and actually challenging assumptions while the rest of us go, yep, that's the way it's done. They go, but why? But how come? But what if? And they innovate in the questions. I'm not either of those. I'm actually an experiential risk taker, which means that I actually innovate by being uncomfortable. I need that pressure. I need to leap, and then the innovation comes out of me. And by doing. So if you come to me and say, I have a theory, I'm like, get the duct tape. I want to see it in action. I have to build things in order to be able to innovate. I can't just keep things in my head or keep them in theory. But understanding about that about myself has helped me adjust my workflow in a way that makes me more innovative. So I think sometimes the reason we think it's only for the select few is because we're not working in a way that serves us. We're actually working in a way that sabotages us because we're not working to our strengths. So if you're a tweaker and you're always given projects where it's all or none, do it and be done, you're not being given the chance to make those adjustments and those tweaks. If you are a collaborative, which is people who pull disparate ideas and people and experiences together to create innovation, and you're working in a silo, you are shooting yourself in the foot because you're not giving yourself the opportunity to do what you do well.
Yeah. which says a lot about our individuality. So there's a saying that says that courage is the opposite of conformity.
Ooh, I like that. Tell me what you think that means.
Well, because we want to conform. We say innovation is for these people who do this.
Right.
Okay. And so we're going to conform to that. And I think we, as human beings, we do want to be like everybody. We want to be liked. And so we conform too much because we all have different, we're all unique. I love the fact that we're all originals.
Yeah.
And I think I said this in the last podcast, that as a flight attendant, the first thing I found out was people are going to behave exactly the same depending on what city we come out of.
Right. You're talking about like Jersey people act a certain way relative to California people. And it's funny, right? And we become herd. It's herd mentality. And what's interesting, I think, about what you said about the courage versus conformity is I think there's another layer to that, which is it is more comfortable to conform. So it is easier and less risky for me to say, I'm not an innovator, Connie is. So go ask her for those crazy, risky, innovative, wild ideas, not me, because it's actually a little bit of self-preservation. It's me going, well, I'm not going to put myself out there because that's so-and-so. I don't believe in myself because that's so-and-so's job. And it's funny to me with companies, the way they work, because so sometimes they'll set up these innovation teams and they get to do the cool shit while everybody else has to do everything else. And they get to wear the innovator t-shirts, right? They're innovators. Nobody else is. And I think in a weird way, not only are you telling these people you have permission to go be innovative, but at the same time, you're telling all these other people you don't. You're not an innovator because these 5 people that I put in a special cool building over here are. And so if you're a leader in a company, you've got to ask yourself, how is that serving the business and those people? And am I asking them, to your point, to conform and just be comfortable? Yeah.
Okay, here's another Brene Brown thing. She said, we sort people, kind of like the sorting hat in Harry Potter, right? And then all of a sudden now that's your role. And I think just bringing awareness, and that's what we're doing right here, right now, bringing awareness that we're in a role regardless. And how can we get out of that role?
Yeah. And sometimes we put ourselves in that role. Sometimes other people put us in there. But, I think when you've got 10 people who innovate and 100 people who don't, you're missing massive opportunities to tap into those people. And the challenge I would have for the listeners out there is to think about, how can I let everybody innovate in the way that works for them? Right? Because that's what this is really about at the end of the day. If I, as a leader, come to you all and say, all right, guys, here's how I innovate. So I'm expecting all of you to do it the way I'm doing it. It's going to fail. And you're going to say, why isn't my team being innovative? Why are they bringing me incremental ideas? But it's because I'm asking you, funny enough, in a weird way, to conform to how I do it as an innovator, which is kind of a whole funny layer of conformity right there, versus being courageous enough to say, let's all do it differently. And I'm going to request and actually respect the different perspectives and opinions, because I know that together it'll be stronger. But I think it's a massive mistake when people think that innovation should be those people on the pedestal or the special titles or the special team. First of all, it's not true. Everyone can be innovative. And second, you're just missing massive potential from the people around you because you're not asking them. All right, let's go to the third one. Innovation is for a certain time. Okay. Do you love scented markers, Connie, as much as I do? I love scented markers.
I do. But I love highlighters anyway.
I know.
And so
using my green pens as we speak.
It's like, oh my goodness. It just adds one more little thing when you're, I wonder who thought of that.
I don't know, but I love it. And to me, scented markers are like corporate crack. I just love them. And I love to smell them. And watermelon's my favorite. But here's the thing. We think that innovation should happen at that 3 p.m. brainstorm with the scented markers and the blank easel pads, and, that person moderating asks you that ridiculous warm-up question like, let's see, what's a good one? If you could be any animal in the jungle, what would you be? Or if you could have dinner with one person living or dead, who would it be? And you're like, sure. And then you're expected to just go. But, you've had 8 hours of work up to there that you've been asked not to be innovative because it's only for a select few. And then you're expect this magic genie to come out of a box and be like, ta-da, here's innovation. But to me, innovation is not a point in time exercise. It's actually a mindset.
Oh, very much so. No, it is. There's an open mindset and a closed mindset. That anything out there is something to be discovered and change. I mean, I just love the sticky note here that this stuff they were making for skin, the whole sticky stuff here, they made that they thought it was going to be for a skin, and now it's on paper.
Right. You never know. And to your point about the sticky notes, by the way, I think sometimes our best ideas, we don't actually have to create new ones. They're already on a PowerPoint slide somewhere or in an idea somewhere and in an email somewhere. If we just went back and mined it and looked at its potential today, we'd probably find it. But, I think the thing with a certain time for me is when we do that, we shut down innovation all those other times, and then we end up having to work harder at the end of the day. So I'll give you, this is kind of a personal story of what happened to me. When we launched the assessment, I swear, Connie, my to-do list was like 10 pages long. I had to get programmer information. I got to get content for it. I had to think about how the algorithm works. I had to blah, 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 right? Like that's what it sounds like to me now. Wah, wah, wah. And my list was so long that I literally, and I'm in the business of innovation, I literally said to myself, okay, Tamara, here's the deal. You're going to stop with the new ideas for a while, and you're just going to get your to-do list done because you've got to focus. Because I have shiny ball syndrome in a big way. It's like, wait, what? Like, I cannot. I'm like, squirrel. Like, it's horrible.
Especially when you have a long list.
Especially because my mind doesn't want to do that. It wants to do the other stuff, right? It's like procrastination. It's worse. That's my way of procrastinating, is innovating. So, but here's the thing about it. So I said to myself, all right, Tamara, when you get through this list, you can then get back to being innovative. You can make that point in time happen later, but not now. So I got through my list and I was so excited. I was like the productivity queen, which nobody would ever say I am. That is not nobody's going to be like, God, have you met Tamara? So productive. Like that's not my thing, right?
Are.
I get a lot done because I prioritize. I'm a great prioritizer, but I'm not productive. Yeah. So, but I was feeling amazing, right? So I get it all done, stuff to my programmer, stuff to my other team. Two interesting things happen. Then when I was done with all that to-do list, I had to get to the marketing stuff. How do I present this to the world, this new offering? And that's where the creativity needed to come in, right? And I had nothing because for a month, I'd been telling myself no ideas. So I'd shut my own brain down. So when I needed it, it wasn't there anymore. And I had to work really hard, double hard to get it back. That's problem number one that happened. When I got to that point in time, I had nothing because I hadn't validated my mind. I hadn't primed the pump before I even got there. The second thing that happened is some of those to-dos on my list, to no surprise, I didn't do as well as I needed. I was so busy checking it off that I wasn't thinking to myself, is this the most meaningful, most innovative way I could do this, present this, solve this problem? So I probably ended up having to add another, let's call it month of work and tens of thousands of dollars actually to redo stuff that I had done because I was just checking it off the list and getting it done. I wasn't doing it to its best. It was a really powerful lesson to me about why innovation is something you should always do and not something that you should wait. So here's what I do now. I can show you because we're on, well, I can't show anybody else, but I can see you, but they can't see us on the podcast. I have a bucket on my desk, and every single time I have an idea, I put it in the bucket because your mind needs to be primed so that in those moments, and I don't care, by the way, what the idea is. I've got ideas in there that are like, I have a heated yoga mat for under your car tires for in the snow in there.
Excellent.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. Nothing. Yeah. But that's okay because I had the idea and I wrote it down. And when we validate our brains and think of innovation as something we're doing all the time, like Keith in the dentist chair, like just doing it all the time, then when you get to those moments where you need them to solve a real problem, your mind is primed. It's like exercise, right? Like you've been doing it the whole time. So I think we have to get out of that point in time mindset and get into a point in time as innovation as like, that's when it happens, to a mindset.
And I think that, so innovation is for a certain time. Well, what about intuition? Intuition doesn't happen between, 8 and 5.
Right. What?
Yeah. And so when I know that sometimes I will look like I'm all over the board, but I'm flowing with my energy. I'll give you a funny example, and it's very mundane, but I am shopping and I'm going to be leaving town, and I reach for some coffee that I know my son and daughter-in-law love. And I got to put it in the cart, and then all of a sudden my brain went between, and I call this between channels, between
I love
radio
that,
stations.
channels.
And I started having all this static go in my mind. Well, I don't know if Brett will take it to him. And what am I thinking? And I said, and I was about to put it back. And then I just shut my mind down. I took that and put the coffee in my cart, and everything flowed. Right. So I said to my husband, I don't know if you're going to go see them, but just give them this coffee. I mean, it seems stupid. But he goes to their house. He says, Mom wants to give this to you. And they go, oh, thank goodness. We just ran out of coffee this morning.
Isn't that interesting how you doubted yourself too there? There's a whole nother layer in that when your mind's always going, the doubt comes with it too.
Yeah. And it was so, and it really taught me that when my mind does that maybe I'm not going with the flow, just take that piece of information and just deal with it. Everything quieted down. It was the perfect thing. And so sometimes I'm walking around and I get an idea and I know it's a good idea because I get energized.
Isn't that funny?
With the yoga thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you went, whoa, what a great idea. And didn't shut it down. Wrote it down, put it in your bucket.
And you know what's funny about that? To your point, I want to go back and dig into what you said about it doesn't happen between 8 and 5. Intuition doesn't happen between 8 and 5 p.m., like when we're at our desks.
Yeah.
That, I think you couldn't be more right. And we, it goes back to it being a point in time. We go to our desk, we sit down, we say, now I've got to solve this. I need innovation. This is my time. Versus really just being open to when it flows, it flows. That idea for the yoga mat, you're welcome, auto companies, by the way, if you choose to do it, came to me at 4:45 in the morning when I was backing out of the garage to get to the gym. It didn't come to me at 8 a.m. when I got to my desk. It came to me in the moment that I was having this frustrating experience of trying to get out of my garage, and there's all this snow and my tires start to spin. And then I was, and then 2 days before that, I'd been to a hot yoga class and I'd have this really sticky mat where I could really feel it. And those two things came together. So I think oftentimes that innovation, those ideas, those aha moments, I think we kind of theoretically know this, right? It's not just one thing. It's all these different things that come together. But that's because you're open to it and you're open to listening to your intuition. I think when we try to make it this objective exercise at 3 p.m. in the brainstorm, we shut down that intuition.
Yep, definitely one of the innovation myths.
Yeah, I think, don't you find I don't know, you just have to be open to it, and it comes in really weird, circuitous ways, and you don't need to justify it. That's the other thing I've learned. It's okay to just be like, I don't know, this just came to me, and then figure out how you figured it out.
Exactly. Why was I justifying getting coffee?
I don't know.
That's what I was trying to do, and then I'm like, just get it. There's stories after stories that, when you flow, it's so awesome. But we all have to deal with some of those resistances and things. But again, bringing awareness and just experimenting with it. And I love your idea of that bucket and putting your ideas in there.
Well, I just think I have a colleague, Scott Helford, who I think you've met, he's in brain science, smarty pants. Love that guy. And
I just got his book again.
Oh, it's great. It's so good. And he was talking about, to me, I had asked him okay, what's the science behind this? And he was talking about priming. And what we're doing is we're preparing our mind for the stimulus. So much like the gym and lifting, I think it's very much similar to that for those of us so we can kind of understand what we're talking about here. When we practice innovation on a daily basis, thinking differently, we get stronger and stronger and stronger at it. When we shut it down, we lose it. And then when we need it, we wonder why it's not there.
Yeah, it is a muscle to use.
Yeah, it totally is. And, people always say to me, oh, Tamara, you're so innovative. I'm not any more innovative than anybody else. I just practice every single day, and that's gotten me stronger at it. You practice every single day, so you're really strong at it. Keith is strong at it because he's thinking about things in the dentist chair. Well, all I'm thinking is please don't put a needle in my mouth. Please don't put a needle in my mouth. All right, let's go to the last one, this is one of my favorites because like I said, this is one that shocks people a little bit. When you're successful, you should keep doing what's working and not innovate too much. Massive myth. So I'm going to say a few brands, Connie, and just give me your reaction when I'm done. Let's see. Sears, Kodak, Blockbuster, Pan Am, BlackBerry. I'll add Radio Shack.
Kmart.
Yep, another one. Exactly. So, let me think. What's the commonality between all those?
Yeah, what would that be?
So they're not around anymore. Why would that be the case?
Yeah, I wonder.
Could it be, Connie, that they rested on their success, didn't see the need to change, and maybe the marketplace left them behind?
Oh, yeah.
Here's interesting that I've heard about Sears is because if you think about these companies, let's back up for a second. Sears paved the way for home shopping long before TV, long before online, right? Kodak invented digital photography. Blockbuster created the home movie rental category. BlackBerry invented the handheld category. So these were once leaders in their categories in the industry, and now they're no longer with us because they thought they'd figured it out while the marketplace kept moving. I mean, the reality is the marketplace is always going to change and shift. Nothing stays the same ever. So when you stay the same and everything's moving past you, you're really putting yourself on the path to irrelevancy. But Sears, for example, let's face it, they had the people, they had the resources, they had the consumer research, they had the product. They could have gone into online retail. It's not that they didn't know. I think it's really naive of us on the outside to be like, well, they just didn't see it coming. Oh, they saw it coming, but they thought that their catalog was so successful that they didn't need to go online because at that time it was at the pinnacle, right? It was doing great, but then online creeped in, and by the time they got over to online, it was too late.
Yeah. Yeah. And I visualize a whole bunch of old people, men. Okay. Because that's how, it was still, trying to make these decisions.
Yeah.
And being comfortable. Why would you want to change?
Oh,
there's a statistic. Yeah. And I think back then things changed a lot slower, even though they did change.
Yeah.
And we all know now that things are changing at a faster pace and you have to keep up with things. There's a stat out there that says people that are going to college now in any kind of technology, that by year 3, what they learned in year 1, 40% of it is obsolete.
I mean, mind blown. Like, what are we going to college to learn? I mean, hopefully it's critical thinking skills because that's what you need. Yeah. But you can't learn a trade anymore and then just be good when you get out.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible to me. And I think that, I'll give a different example of one that I think has done a brilliant job of making sure this doesn't happen to them. And they own it in the book, and I can't remember the name of the book, and that's Starbucks. Starbucks got really big. Let's face it, you could go to a corner and have 3 Starbucks to pick from. So if I said to you, Connie, meet me on the corner of Colfax and Fillmore, the Starbucks, you still would have 3 Starbucks to pick from. Like, it got ridiculous. One of the things in the book about Starbucks, they talk about it a couple of years ago, is that they recognized that they got complacent and that they needed to innovate again, that they got comfortable in where they were. And I think the reason they're back on their game today is because they recognized that they were starting to rest on their success. And if they didn't start to change, something was going to do it for them. And so they're kind of the opposite example, I think, of the Kodak and the Sears of this world. And to your point, the rate of change is so fast that you've got to continually think about, how do I improve? How do I change? How do I innovate? You can't just keep doing what you're doing. It doesn't work that way anymore.
No, not at all. It's amazing and sometimes scary, but again, it's about being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Hey, let me ask you a different flip side to this, or maybe a personal level to this. Do you find in your own work in life that this applies, that you got to be careful not to rest on your success or rest on what's working for you, and that you've got to constantly kind of, in order to grow and learn and change, be uncomfortable and try new things? And do you find it applies for humans too, I guess is my question.
Oh, absolutely. When you think about what you have to do on social media these days in order to stay relevant, not everybody likes to do that. I mean, you're going to put out content, right? And so you're going to open yourself up and be vulnerable. And that can be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And for those of us who are over 30, it's also a change in our behavior because we're not used to that, right? I mean, we're more so now. And I think some of us are more open to it than others. But generally speaking, you're asking us to do things differently than we did them growing up. And Absolutely. That means change. So I think, kind of to what you're saying, the same is true personally. If you're at the top of your game professionally, I don't think it matters what level you're at. You got to be thinking about, how do I reinvent myself as well? How do I get new skills? How do I change? How do I evolve? Because someone's coming up on your heels. I guarantee it. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I felt at one point that I kept reinventing myself too much.
Tell me more. That's interesting.
Some people would say, Connie, you're always doing something new. I mean, they really cut me down. And I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing something new, or maybe I should just keep doing what I'm doing. And then so I really put myself down for trying new things all the time. And then I went, you know what? That's them. That's their problem. I love reinventing myself. So,
do you think that that's really a matter of those people wanting to be comfortable and wishing that you would stay in that comfortable place with them versus what you're doing, which is constantly, if you think of it as a little circle and you're all inside the circle, you, Connie, are constantly kind of taking your big toe and you're like, I'm going to head outside the circle for a moment. I'm going to try my whole foot outside that circle. And that freaks everybody out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm kind of careful when I tell somebody I got a new idea. Here's what I'm thinking of doing, because I don't need that negative feedback.
Yeah. It's interesting because this could be a whole different podcast. I'll only say that what Connie's saying is important, because there's a difference between those people who are dragging you down and trying to keep you in the circle and people who can help you make the idea stronger because they see the holes. And the key is to understand the difference between the two people. Whole different podcast. We'll get to that another time if that's a question that comes in. But for now, let's go back. So let's just to recap. And Connie, tell me what I miss. One is, don't think outside the box. Rearrange the box you have. Second for the myth is, innovation's not just for the select few. It's for everybody, but you got to know how you innovate. The third one is, innovation's not about a certain point in time. It is about a mindset and priming that pump all the time. And then lastly, you cannot rest on your success.
And make it fun. It can be fun to keep innovating. It is fun.
What do you find fun about it?
Oh, maybe because I call myself a discoverer. It brings such good energy to me.
Do you find that you treat it like a game or...
Absolutely.
Because I think if you don't attach all the weight of success versus failure to it and you treat it more like a game of Monopoly or whatever, it's actually a lot more fun because you're like, let's see what happens next.
Sure. And then again, that's a mindset.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Maureen, thank you for the question. I love debunking those myths because I find them so, what did I say in the beginning? Ridonculous.
There's that word.
Before I go, was I right or was I right? Are you sabotaging your own innovation efforts? Yeah, I find most of us do and don't even know it. But now you do. And I want to make avoiding these myths easy. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to our website, click on our blog, and check out all the ways that you can engage in smart innovation practices. We have a ton of resources out there for you. So go to LaunchStreet, GOTO LaunchStreet.com, and go get yourself some innovation resources. All right, Tamara out.
Thanks for hanging out with us inside LaunchStreet. When you're ready to take your game to the next level, join the thousands of others that are upping their innovation edge on GoToLaunchStreet.com, the top online education resource and community platform for innovators looking to use innovation to get measurable results. Go to LaunchStreet.com.